pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Everyone here except Mike, who's out at work.
Need to accept the agenda before us, which is the same one that was in your packet.
Also,
Moved by Leah, second by Troy. Simultaneous. Moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Agenda is accepted. Minutes from September the 22nd. Those were emailed for review. Did we have, well, we have two sets of minutes. So the first one is our regular meeting from September, which I finally got reviewed. So on that first set of minutes, do we have any changes, additions? Seeing none? I will move to accept the minutes from September 22nd. Go to second. Second by Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are adopted. Then we had our special meeting minutes for October the 6th, when we had a meeting on the open space ordinance. Any changes, additions, subtractions? Seeing none, do we have a motion to accept those?
So moved.
Moved by Leah, second by
Second.
Steve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion is adopted. Public comment. We have a public hearing tonight on the open space preservation ordinance, so we'll hold those comments for that. Anyone here to comment on anything where we don't have a public hearing this evening? Welcome, everybody. Seeing none? All right. Will everyone stand up at once? Public comment, none, closed. So we do have a public hearing that will open up right now on the open space preservation ordinance. Just a recap of how we got here. It's been several years, we've been working on one of these. We sent a few versions back and forth between the board and the planning commission. Back and forth, had some difficulty deciding how we wanted to address density. Ended up hiring our great consultant who helped us out and is on the phone, right? Or is she
Nope,
not?
she's not in.
She not on tonight?
I think she was unable to make
Rebecca,
tonight's
that's
meeting,
right, yeah. Well,
But
we
Rob,
talked-
our attorney is here, so.
Okay. We talked to her at length, had many meetings with her, and versions and drafts went back and forth, and finally, we were able to get an attorney to look at it, who is here with us tonight. We got his comments, and we had a special meeting in October to move this forward a little more quickly, and went back and forth and decided on those details, and we set the public hearing for this evening with anticipation that we could take action on it one way or the other and get it to the township board, either a recommendation or not, for their next meeting. So that's where we're at. And I also want to note, Patrick, we got your purple line copy. I like purple, it's not red, it's purple. Purple line copy.
Is it purple?
Yeah, I think it was purple.
I think that's how it came out when I
It came,
read it, so.
it came out of mine in purple.
Yeah.
That's on a different agenda item.
Oh, okay. But yeah, the open space preservation ordinance is before us, so we'll take public comment on that, and then we'll have discussion and see where we want to go. So, first up, I think the back was first, so we'll start back there. Your name for the
Kathy Squires.
Kathy Squires. Okay, thanks, Kathy. Go ahead.
I have a question on the change in the private road. How, I guess, basically, how's this going to affect, already, things that are already in place?
As far as private roads?
Yeah,
Okay.
because, there's the preservation already in place, there's been, discussion and backgrounds about a private road going in there.
Yeah, the way we addressed it is when doing an open space preservation development ordinance, you have to consider what advantages are there for the developer to do this, assuming that you want to preserve open space and have them take advantage of this. We have a current ordinance on the books that really doesn't have any, it hasn't been used because there's not a lot of incentive there. One way you can provide incentive is to focus on density, which is what we started out doing several years ago, and couldn't come to agreement on that because that's a tricky issue. Do you really want more density or don't you? So we backed away from that, and our consultant Rebecca suggested that we look at things that are popular in the township that people have asked for that we haven't been able to get to or do, and one of those is private roads. So in order to get a private road, you have to consider and do under open space preservation development options. And again, this is a process where it's a design process. You bring in an open space design compared to a normal design, same density but different layout in order to preserve open space. Advantage and incentive there is to do a private road as part of that, which in most of these cases is needed because if you're going to cluster the homes in the back section or a center section, then you need a way to access it.
Now, I understand about open spaces, I champion cluster housing and stuff like that. I guess I'm not asking my question correctly. There's, some people call preserves open space. They're not development, they're open space. So how, there's a preserve here in Sylvan Township, and there's a lane that goes back to it. And the county has made drawings designating the lane a private road, even though ordinances are in place saying there is no private roads. But it's setting a precedence, in my opinion, and I'm concerned about further supporting something like that, you know, being able to have a private road go into public preserve or some kind of open space preservation. So I'm concerned about how it might affect something that's already there, that there's actually dispute whether that drawing is accurate or should have been done. It kind of just does the thing, I guess. Because it was never a private road, it was a 66-foot wide easement, shared easement. And then they redrew the preserve, indicating a private road. And I'm extremely concerned about that. I haven't been able to address it to anybody. I brought it up, but nobody, I don't know how to address it. So with this new ordinance allowing private roads in open space, I'm concerned that it might open a floodgate. And I'm totally for cluster housing and preserving open spaces. That's why the preserve is there. However, permitting private roads that other people can use other than for the reason it's being used for is concerning to me, I guess. So I don't know if you understand the history of it.
No, but I do think I know what you're getting at, and we'll make that part of the discussion when we get to discussion, and we'll dive into that a little bit.
Okay.
So thank you.
So thanks, if you could address that problem of something that's already in place that is not supposed to have a private road to it.
Okay.
How this might, okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Next, yep. Oh. Pointing at two people.
With me?
Yep.
My name's Carl Olson. I live on Sylvan Road. Forgive me if I'm a little late to the party on this one. Is this already going ahead? Or is this an opportunity to, is it a done deal already and you're just working out the details?
I don't know, we're having a public hearing, we'll take the public comment, the members can talk, and then we'll either give a recommendation to the board one way or the other, then the township board will take it up. So,
All right.
still part of the process.
All right. I'm just here to say, although I'm good friends with Patrick, but I am opposed to clustered housing. And as I see that as a gateway to kind of an exploitation of other lanes around the area? Where do we start drawing the lines here? So I just wanted to let my comment be known about that.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Next, yeah, finally.
Dave Reinhardt on Conway Road, and I just wanted to say, first and foremost, thanks, David, for making this a priority this month and special meeting and all.
Yeah.
Very much appreciated. And an open space act that steers and incentivizes maintaining the rural character and allowing development at the same time. If it occurs, I think it's a really good thing because everyone seems to be in favor of the rural field, and that's why we moved here as well. What I hope we avoid is just adopting something that meets the letter of the law and eventually gets the lawyers involved again. So unless it's really going to help and change things here, I just want to make sure that's in everyone's mind as you take a vote here.
Thank you, Dave. Patrick.
Okay, I'll try to keep this quick. First of all, I want to thank everybody on the planning commission for a long road and a lot of effort. And I'm sure everybody wants to get this behind us in one way or the other. Everybody knows where I stand pretty much. I wanted even some further edits to this, as everybody knows. I submitted what I thought would be a good set of edits for consideration. At this point, I'm not seeing that they're likely to be incorporated, but I want that to be on the record. I do want to ask very quickly whether the draft that's being considered tonight is the same thing that came out of the work session a couple weeks ago. There haven't been any other alterations.
Nope.
My main concern and my main motivation for preparing that alternate text was concern about how effectively this ordinance is going to be used in the real world. You guys all know me. I'm going to use it if I can, no matter what. I'm not sure it fits exactly what I need, but I picture another developer coming in, and we've talked about this. We want to make an open space development an attractive option compared to a conventional development. We want, if a developer comes in the door and says, hey, I have this piece of land, I want to do such and such on it, it would be nice if we could give that developer something and say, well, have you considered this other alternative if you're going to develop it anyway, right? Because this doesn't give you any new development rights necessarily. It just says, we're giving you an attractive alternative. It would be nice if we had some kind of program in place where we did that as a routine when somebody comes in the door. And then some of my concerns would probably fade then, because Sylvan Township eventually would be known as a place that encourages the open space style of development and really, really wants 50% of every development to be permanently preserved as open space. Because that's the real goal of this, right? Like, we want 50% of our land, all of our land if possible, to be preserved. And we're going to help people do that if that's what they want. That would be my request to you right now. Again, I want to thank everybody for going down this road. It's been contentious at times. If I went and dwelled on the text changes that I wanted, it would be contentious again. And I'm not into that. I'm actually pleased to see something coming out the other end, finally. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it. Other comments?
I didn't mean that way.
I was gonna comment, but I'm gonna leave that.
Just sausage, right?
Yeah, sausage.
Sausage, yeah.
Sausage maker. Any other comments? Yeah.
Dan Russell, Ridge Road. Apologize if I'm a little bit scattered. It's been a busy weekday. But a couple of things. So I don't suspect that if the developer that wanted to do something on Pierce Road came in with an open space plan, cluster housing, that it would have been received any differently than it was, right? So by throwing this on the books as is, you're inviting developers to come in and go, look at this. I can do all these things according to your ordinances, and then the residents who clearly don't want this type of density in their neighborhood come out of the woodwork. And that's been happening since I've been here, since 1990. So nothing's changed in terms of what the residents want. The late great Tom Caplis, in one of these meetings, said, you want to preserve land? Go back to 10-acre minimums. And I know that's probably impossible, but we could go back to something. 5 acres, 2 acres. So like having something like this on the books is just setting us up for another lawsuit. And since we're the most sued township on the planet, seems like this might be a mistake, right? Having open space, something on the books, I know is a legality, and we gotta do something, right? But something like this looks like an invitation to a developer to come in, and oh, by the way, we'll give you a private road, and that's not been talked about much either. So to sort of slide the private road into this thing, I've got family, I got 2 family members live on private roads, and you know when they first build them and all the people are super happy about it, it's great. Fast forward 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, the road needs maintenance. Whatever else happens, and everyone's mad at each other. No one. It's like I live on the corner. Why am I paying for maintenance at the other end of the road? So what happens to that road? And I know there's something in here about that, but that can also be abandoned. Or if you start a development and someone buys the last lot on the road, who's going to pay for the maintenance on that road while that subdivision or that development gets built out? What if that takes 10 years? Now you got one person paying the bill for plowing and maintenance and everything else in case fire truck needs to go down their road. So there's a lot of iffy things in the ordinance. Looks like a blank check. Looks like invitations for legal matters. So I'm the biggest fan of open space preservation in its truest sense. This is a development tool, and I've been saying that since we started this process. So I just want to be on record for that. Again, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Now cluster development, in my understanding, is good for the environment. But the private roads and the maintenance of those private roads, developers have often shut everything off on individual residents instead of bringing it in. And this is really, I agree with him, is a serious matter to consider for the future and future residents. Because everybody, it's a great idea, but something needs to be in place that encourages developers who are already, they have the land and do it. It encourages them to be more environmentally sensitive about it, but doesn't give them a blank check, like he says, for the future, and just shoves it off to the future residents. And that's where the roads come in and where maintenance comes in for open spaces. So that is something that is a big concern about these kinds of development initiatives. And I'm sure there's other townships and towns and other, I'm sure you could address this, but that's just something I just wanted to, you can be really for the open spaces and stuff, but if you don't have something in place for the developer to take accountability for maintenance, then it just opens it up to shoving it off to the future residents.
Yeah.
Ryan St. John, East Under McKinley, so long ways from here. I've been following this, I don't know, it's been 6, 8 years now, back on this tiny homes, and I agree with it for the most part. But I look at places like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tim's Lake Preserve, it's down on Mount Hope Road. I mean, that's an HOA on condos, and that seems to work okay, it's been around for 20-some years. But the same thing is like, long-term maintenance, if you go up my road where I live, go to McKinley Heights, I watched that, little subdivision there, go from having an asphalt road to having a dirt road, and it's supposed to be asphalt. So, I look at things like that, and, inches and miles change. I mean, I live next to Robin Hills Farm, as far as I can tell, and zoning doesn't apply there, so I just worry about inches. So, that's my thing, like, this is a good plan, I think, it's just, I I don't think it's 100% solid.
All right, another public comment. None? Let me make sure. Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing and get to discussion. I want to start the discussion by answering a few questions I heard. This would not affect any current private road issue that's out there. There are roads in this township that were adopted or created in a way that I think probably wasn't all that well. Even the hockey arena, we found out, has a road that no one maintains and is not up to standard. That's probably why you need a private road ordinance, because that's where you ensure that there are development agreements that not only require the developer, but also future owners. And we had quite a lengthy discussion with the attorney about that to ensure that, even while the development is happening, to Mr. Russell's point. But I do want to answer a question. I wouldn't normally do this, but someone asked, would this have changed anything on Pierce Road? The answer is yes, since I was the deciding vote. If that had been an OSPDO, I'd have voted for it and be done by now. Does this encourage development? I don't know how, because the density would be the same no matter if you used this or just kept it the way it was. You know, we've got to have some understanding that there are reasons we don't have 10-acre lots, and that's because we ended up with bowling alleys of yards, which isn't open space preservation. That's just fertilizer and lawn mowing. Clustering homes is how you actually preserve open space. So you got to balance private property rights and the rights of individuals to do with their property. There was another controversial plan that was out there a couple of years ago around a property with 6 homes and development, and open space preservation probably would have helped that too, because it would have limited the number of homes that people think could have went there. So we could have kept it ag and done an OSPDO and had 2-acre lots, but they could have been clustered, and you still would only have 6 homes because you only have so many acres for 2 apiece. So anyway, I think this is a good step, and I know that there are concerns, but I think this keeps us out of court. I think what we're doing now puts us in court, which is just denying everything because we feel like we need to deny everything. So this is a happy balance. I don't know if anyone will use this other than Patrick. I really don't, but maybe they will, maybe they won't someday. But other than that, that's my thoughts. We did get some purple lines from Patrick that was sent, or should be in front of you. Just to make sure you know that, you have that. You know, if you want to amend it, make changes, we can do that. If you have questions for your attorney, the attorney's here. I do want to ask Carol about the preserve. So which preserve is this?
Squires, there's actually 3 preserves in the township, and Kathy actually has a preserve on her property. Cons have a preserve on Hayes Road.
Hayes Road.
And there's another one, I just can't right off the top of my head.
This is like a shared easement drive that goes back there, is that what it is?
It's kind of interesting because when the county takes over on these preserves, they maintain them and the access to them, and I don't know, are they maintaining your access to that, to your?
Right now, they're maintaining the lane. They're still trying to push into another 33 feet.
But that's a
I don't
legal
know what
issue
they're
that you have to, work out with them.
They put on a drawing, instead of the lane that was
Yeah.
always there, they indicated that it's a private road.
But I don't believe the legal documents state that, it's just an easement legally. I mean, that sounds like you're working that out with your legal counsel on that.
Yeah, that's what it's on. Okay.
But it's private road, if this opens up.
This wouldn't change your existing, unless you want to develop your property and use this, then you could do it. But no, this is, the property owner this has to be initiated by them or the developer that's bought the property. Attorney Dahl, anything that you want to mention
Not really. I mean, if anybody has any questions, if board members have any questions or, you know, we've looked at this language, you know, there's the revisions by Patrick. If you want to ask any questions about those, that's fine. Otherwise, you know, at the conclusion, once you close the well, you did close the public hearing, I think. You know, so now you're just in deliberation. What you're doing is making a recommendation to the township board, and the township board will then consider the recommendation and make the ultimate decision. And at the township board level, they can either accept the recommendation and adopt an ordinance, or they could amend it at that time, or they can send it back to the planning commission for further consideration.
Gotcha. And that last option, by the way,
We've seen that.
I'm looking at you, Sam.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Well played. All right. Any other questions, comments, things you want to discuss? Patrick's edits, anything that you saw in there?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Sorry.
in Patrick's edits, you know, when I read through this several times, on, under C, general development requirements.
Which page are you on?
Let's look at his.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
page are you on?
3.
3.
It states the design shall be reviewed to determine the number of lots that could be feasibly constructed following the adopted plat requirements. So he's saying the parallel design need only provide sufficient detail for this determination, and I think that's a great clarification. Because why should a developer spend all of this money on the plans? I mean, and I don't have a lot of experience with looking at developers' plans, but it's a big cost to them to do that. So I think that we don't need it to be in detail as to where they were gonna put anything. I mean, we need to know where the housing is gonna be, where the road is gonna be, and where the open space is gonna be. But I don't think it's anything that the developer needs to spend thousands of dollars on, especially when they're not gonna use it. It is just, it's a piece of information that the planning commission looks at and takes into consideration.
Right, so I understand what you're saying. So the way we've structured this is that you come in with a plan that fits the zoning ordinance that or the zoning classification you're under. So let's say it's ag, and let's say 2-acre lots mean you could have 20 homes, and under existing requirements, it would be laid out this way.
Okay.
Then the parallel design, that's the parallel design. Then the real design that you want is the open space design. You want to cluster them, you need this waived and this waived, and this is how we're going to get there. So you're saying, in Patrick's edit, and I did look at this, the parallel design need only provide sufficient detail for the determination of the number of homes or the number of lots. My only question on that one was, I don't have a real problem with that language. My question on it was for not a straight up, but let's say it's a platted development, or are there developments where we would want more information on the original design, that maybe they come in with something that's just showing this is how many I could get, right? That we'd want some more information on that before we consider the open space design?
I don't know if Rob wants to address this, but, when these are reviewed, they're always reviewed by the fire department and engineering.
Right.
And so when they're looking at these, I don't know if they would look at the initial, parallel design to see, for the cluster or for the density, and then look at, obviously, they're gonna be looking at the cluster to see where that fits in. I think having placement helps them somewhat with some of the grading and where topography and where some of the other issues are going, if that makes any sense, because you're gonna have open space, but you're also gonna have wetlands area, you're gonna have runoff, you're gonna have some of these other things, so I think it helps them to some degree to weigh that out.
Yeah, like if you had two designs, the first one being non-open space design, and it showed an issue with runoff where you actually determined, you know what, that's not how many homes you could have put there because there's this issue. And so then on the other design, because people have made this comment, right? Like you have to assume the developer wants to get as many as they can, right? So they're going to come in and show you, I have 100 acres and 2 acre lots, I get 50 homes. Like every little bit of the land can be used. Our engineer might say, no, based on this platting, you know, and these requirements, you would be down to 38 or 42, whatever.
Right.
So then the open space design is based on those 42, not on 50.
Right.
So I think it protects us if we don't limit what detail we need in that plat requirement. Does that make sense? That's the way I thought of it this afternoon. I don't know if it-
So maybe Rob has some comments.
Yeah, Rob, do you have any experience with that?
Well, yeah, I guess my only comment, I don't really mind that provision that he's put in there, frankly, because it's, you know, the parallel design need only provide sufficient detail for making that determination. But, you know, on the first section, we say that it needs to be consistent with state township requirements and design criteria for a tentative preliminary plat. And then in the next section, we're saying it's reviewed then to determine the number of lots that could be feasibly constructed following the adopted plat requirements. And basically it's just saying, you know, they don't have to, maybe the requirements would say that you have to have a landscape plan. Well, why would you have to do a landscape plan to determine that? So I think it's just giving a little leeway. I mean, we still get whatever we need to determine this in sufficient detail, how many lots they would, and it's not just they come in with a number, they still have to come in with a plan, show you the plan. It might not have as much detail or every requirement that we have for platting, but it would have to be what, you know, in general, what we would need for a plat to know how many lots, you know, would be able to be designed for that plat.
Right.
So I don't really have a problem with it because it's just saying that you only have to provide that sufficient detail for the determination. It's still up to the planning commission to say, we need more detail. This is not enough detail. You know, I just think it probably relieves them of some of the more, you know, do they have to show us the design for if there was a water system or, you know, sewer? You know, do they have to show us those designs, you know, which they might in a preliminary plat have to show us more detail that we don't need for the design criteria to tell how many lots we can fit in, you know, in that property using traditional platting. So I don't really mind it because it's still, you know, within the planning commission's determination or even the administrator's decision, you know, when they get the application to say, hey, this is enough detail for us to determine that.
Right. Yeah, the key being that language sufficient for this determination. So, okay.
Yeah, so I don't really have a problem with it because I think it's just kind of giving you the idea like, yes, you have to provide these plans, but the purpose is to provide this determination. That's all.
Gotcha. Understood. Agreed. Any other thoughts on that? So I'd be open to making that change. All right. Let's go through all this before we. Any other things off Patrick's or others that someone wants to propose or change? Did we?
I did have in looking at Patrick's changes.
Yep.
Everything about preserving like natural wetlands or being mindful of runoff or things related to the natural state of the property. He's struck, and I'm not necessarily in support of that. I can see why we'd want to strike it because it otherwise, you know, might keep people from doing what they want to do, but we have a lot of wetlands, a lot of marsh here, and I really think it's important that we stay consistent with some of the other
would agree with that too.
Yeah, I think one of the conversations we had in October 6th meeting was recommendations versus standards. And I understand Patrick's point about recommendations. I feel more comfortable from a legal standpoint having standards that we review against. So I looked at that too. Other areas, it doesn't just have to be Patrick's area, but any other areas that, as you read through this another time, caught your eye? Yeah, I think you were getting to page 4, that strikeout on 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I did, and this was more for Rob. So under, on page 7, the utilities section, so we talked about this last time, I can't remember where we, so that section 3, subsection B, in here Patrick had struck out and the approval of the township. Private on-site and or community water supply and septic systems may be permitted subject to the, is the reason we put and the approval of the township just because of our water system being part of that?
Well, there might be times when, you know, so like if you're going to do a private water system, that is, well, I'm going to say a public water system, but for private development.
Right.
You know, so if they have a private development, they might be required to make a public water system on that site. If they do, the township does have a right to basically say that if something happens, they would take over that water system. You know, so I guess, you know, I don't look at it as though we are, I look at it more, I think I look at it more that we're going to have some say in whether they do this or not.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, rather than say over whether we are actually operating it or not. I mean, that's going to be under the purview of, like it says, you know, Eagle or the health department. You know, we're not going to be involved, but we could be involved. That's why I think we do need to ultimately say whether we will allow it or not. Because if a sewer system fails, we may have to step in and require the special assessment, or, you know, you know, if we didn't do that, it could take over operation of it. So I do think the townships involved could be involved in, should be involved in deciding whether or not they'll allow for it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine leaving it back in there. I just remember we talked about it and I was reading it and couldn't remember, but yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, if there's any semblance of creating a system, we'd want to have as much review as possible. Okay. That's what I had. Anybody else? Yeah, and you know, while we're waiting, so anyone has another comment, they can. But there was also a comment, I think during public comment, about, you know, sort of sliding in this private road piece. This came up as soon as Rebecca came to talk to us, which was well over a year and a half, feels like 3, whatever it was. But it came up when we were trying to figure out what are other ways to incentivize other than density. I thought it was a pretty good compromise, considering that, you know, we've had issues where private roads, one side or the other, basically the issue comes down to creating more density. So if we limited the density and we just added private roads a way to cluster, then we sort of solve that problem. So I've been talking about that for a while. I don't like to be thought that we're sliding anything in. Although it seems to be what everyone says.
No, I think on most of these are private roads. You got to have it to make the development work.
Right.
It has to be there, but it is an incentive.
Yeah. Okay. All right, folks. Ready when you are. Oh, we do have to make that change, though.
Yeah, I mean, you can make, if you're ready for a motion, you can make a recommendation to approve the language as revised.
You just revise it and do it as revised.
Yeah, and just cite what you're revising.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure everyone's comfortable with the revision, so, all I know is Sandy and I. So, that was page
3, Patrick's.
3 of Patrick's. That's why I'm on the wrong one.
D at the top of the page.
Yeah, all it is, instead of ending with that period of requirements, we'd add the parallel design need only provide sufficient detail for this determination. As Robert said, it doesn't really limit us because we can still come back to the developer and say, there's not enough detail here for our determination. We're the ones making the determination.
Right.
And essentially, what you're determining is the density and the use of land. Because you may deem a part of the land is not buildable, and then when you go to do the open space design, that means that it's not part of their density calculation. Does that make sense? So anyway, I don't have any problem adding the language, and Sandy brought up a good point, so. Does anyone else?
May I point something out really quickly?
Real quick.
The same language on page 11, the first point on page 11, which is point number 6, where it also mentions parallel plan. You may want to consider that as well.
And you added it there. I didn't see that.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
That's one of those that is mentioned in 2 comments. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for consistency, we could put it in both in the same. Because again, it's based on density determination.
I do have a question. Does this open us up to litigation issues if we do look at it, we don't have all the information we want, we send it back saying, hey, we need you to do more? Could that be seen as stalling or?
That's what I asked Rob, and he said he felt comfortable that it would, yeah. I think Rob.
Yeah, I'm fine. If you don't have sufficient detail, you can just tell them that you can table it until they come back with the detail you need.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, part of the timing issue is us taking action, and when we're involved in something like that, the action has started.
Okay.
Because honestly, we've had site plans where I think we've gone back and forth, I don't know how many months.
Okay, I haven't done it.
Yeah, no, it's the right question, it's just, and a lot of times Carol will intercept first and say, no, we need, because the engineer will tell Carol, no, I need this, this, and this, before I can write that letter to the planning commission. So yeah, if there's not a major heartburn over adding in those 2 spots, let's add in those 2 spots. Carol and you guys can make note of that. Okay. Otherwise, we have the ordinance with that change before us. Okay. All right. I will make a motion to adopt the ordinance as revised and to make a recommendation to the township board that they adopt this open space preservation development ordinance as revised and before us. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Sam. Any last comments or talk on the motion? Okay. We will roll call vote it. We'll start down there. You, Courtney? Yes. Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Leila?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. So unanimously recommended to the township board. It's now in your hands, Sandy. Please don't bring it back.
I'll try my best.
Do they still egg houses on Halloween? Not that I'm making any suggestions. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Patrick, for your patience and everyone else. But Patrick, we're not done with you. Because you have 2 things for us. One was your zoning application. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's first look at the one we tabled from September 22nd. we were done with the public hearing, we were, asked to table it while we saw what we did here with this OSBDO, which we've sent to the township board, who I am told by Kathy and others, they're gonna take it up with haste and do their job, and review it, obviously. So what do you wanna do on this one? Do you want us to remove it, vote on it? What are we gonna do?
Well, I would imagine, I was thinking about this afternoon, I would imagine that you probably have 4 options, not all of which you'd like to pursue. But, yeah, obviously you could vote on it.
Mhm.
You could table it again. I could withdraw it.
Mhm.
I guess I've decided not to withdraw it, and I could explain why if you need me to, but,
No?
or you could negotiate on the conditions.
Right.
I think those are the 4 things you could do. So in my preference, I would.
Do something?
My preference would be that I should table it again. And my second preference besides that would be to vote on it.
Okay. Well, tabling it doesn't get us anywhere, I don't think. I thought about it too, and you did send as we first talked about this, there was a technicality in that we needed a better site plan with actual, what was missing on the original one? I forget. The buildings, right?
Buildings and the adjacent, uses.
And the adjacent uses. So now, yeah, we have a site plan that shows ag residential, okay. So that satisfies that.
Yeah, I woke up in the early morning thinking about this.
Yeah.
And I better do that.
I'm sure you did. So we can do as Patrick said, right? We can table this further, or we can, if he doesn't want to withdraw it, then my suggestion is to take action, make your recommendation to the board, and go from there, and then both things go to them simultaneously, since they kind of go together, right? If you remember, this is a conditional rezoning from ag to low-density residential. You had a cap on the number of homes, and you had a 50% preservation requirement. Those were the 2 conditions, right?
That was meant to be reassurance that we're not stepping outside of what we've already talked about.
Right. And your cap was 12? Okay. And the 50%, I was right, 50%, right, on the open space? Okay. So that was before us. When we talked last time, the other issue was this site plan drawing and knowing the things around it. Last time we discussed, just to remind everyone, we talked about, I think Tom brought up issues of zoning around there, the ag zoning. We changed it over to low density residential and how it fits. We went through our standards of review at length, which is in the minutes. So we were just sitting here waiting for one way or the other action. Any thoughts from planning commission members, what you want to do with this? I'm looking at it.
Did we determine, is it 9, 10, 11, or 12 homes, or is that just floating with the?
12. Well, it was a cap.
A cap, so
No more than 12.
No more than 12 is how it's written. Right.
Plus, I think it's as I understand it, isn't there one on the property currently? So is it 13 or is it 12?
That's a good question.
I intended that to be 12 inclusive of the.
Inclusive of the one.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. So it's 12 total.
Yes, there's one under construction, it's not
Right.
one, but that is meant to be one of them.
We'll note that clarification in minutes. Good question. Sandy, did you have something you look like you were asking?
I'm having a hard time formulating my question, which is, I mean, certainly adopting the open space ordinance would be really helpful to the type of development that Patrick wants to do. But the board hasn't adopted it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking that perhaps tabling this until after the board has the opportunity to look at it.
You could do that, that's true, since it's based on that OSPD, yeah. Okay. Because that does change your thinking, right? So let's say the board gets rid of the OSPD. Then you come back and you look at this and go, okay, he's basically doing his own OSP.
Right.
And then that's the light you look at it. If they do approve it, then you look at it and go, well, why doesn't he just use the OSP? Because then we do the parallel design plan.
Right.
So, I get it. It's a good point.
So that would give time for him to consider if they pass the OSP, to say, yeah, I'm gonna work with that, and I'll withdraw this. I have no problem with that flexibility.
Yeah, because we've done the work on this. This is just an action item. Mr. Chair.
We can do anything he wants to do.
Yeah, whenever.
If he wants to table it, we can table it. If he wants us to vote, we can vote on it.
Okay. With Sandy's point, I guess I do see tabling it. Because otherwise you all would sit there and hold it until you made your decision, right? Yeah, so it doesn't matter. So let's hold it here. Okay, do we have a motion to table? Moved by Tom, second by Steve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion adopted. We will keep it on the list. Now, that gets to another one that we never took off the list, but it fell off the agenda. So originally you'd come in with a rezoning application for the same piece of property, which was not a conditional rezoning application, and you asked us to table that. And then we got back to work with Ms. Harvey's drafting. That was way back in 2021, October. Okay, so I would like to remove that.
I would too, and if we can do that tonight, that would be good.
Okay, so what's the process for that, Rob? Is that?
Well, if Patrick's agreeable to remove his rezoning application, I would just have it reflected in the minutes and just as the chair accept the withdrawal of it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I would accept the withdrawal of it and encourage the withdrawal of it. And I'm assuming between you and Carol, you get it all figured out between dollars and cents between your two applications, right?
But they should be totally separate.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Carol, we all good with that?
Yep, absolutely.
Reflected in the minutes?
Perfect.
All right. Thank you. That was easy. Carol, I did want to ask a question on our communication. Well, we can do it in comments. Any communication from any other townships?
Not from other townships, but I apologize to Brian that he had sent this earlier. I did not get it around to you. You might have to take a brief few minutes to review it. He sent a complaint at the end of September regarding Robin Hills, and I told him I would get this to you. And again, I apologize. I'm getting it to them at the last minute. So if you want to give him a few moments, and you can probably give a good synopsis of his complaint.
I can wait a month to
Okay.
get it, so no
I don't know if
huge rush.
anybody else wants a copy here. Brian already knows what it says, so. Yeah, I think you here.
So, Brian, is the real complaint here noise or the operation?
The operations led to the noise.
Rob, I'll send it to you, because I realize you haven't seen it either.
I mean, this property has noise monitoring systems. I know Kurt's been out there. A lot of us have checked this out and haven't had the same noise measurement that you're sort of having. So, trying to figure out, is it consistent noise or is this?
No, it's not consistent. It depends on who is operating at the farm.
Okay.
So it largely depends, and if you just go hang hang out in Lanewood next door to me, you hear the same thing there, especially going by Creek Circle. The condos there by MPT2, you can hear it there too. And it's entirely dependent on, like, whenever I complain to you guys, I don't hear crickets for like months. And then it'll slowly get louder and louder until the point where it sounds like someone's running karaoke operation in my backyard. It just slowly gets louder. I think it entirely depends on who is there, but I mean, I haven't heard a tractor there in years. So either the tractors got quieter, I got more deaf, or they don't actually have fun.
I'm more than willing to let the members sit with this until the next time, determine what to do, or determine if Rob has any suggestions.
Well,
Keep in mind-
I would just say this,
Yeah,
you know, the planning commission's role in enforcement, really, you don't have a role in enforcement. So if somebody makes a complaint, it needs to be investigated by the administrator. And then ultimately, whether, you know, the administrator may need to bring it to the township board for enforcement. But, you know, it really is not the role of the planning commission to get involved in complaints of, you know, things that have been approved. There's standards that would have been adopted in your special land use approvals. And it's really up to the township and the zoning administrator to look at what the complaints are and determine, and maybe have them forwarded to me. I'll look at them and the conditions and see if there's an enforcement action or contact from the zoning administrator or attorney that need to be had, or whether there needs to be a citation for a violation. So it's fine for the planning commission to be aware of these types of things, because if it does come back for some other special land use amendment, you're aware of the issues that might be surrounding that property. But in terms of just enforcement, it's not really something that's within the purview of the planning commission.
So I want to jump in. When the planning commission did approve this, there was a provision in the special use for an annual review.
Okay,
And so that was really why the planning commission kind of gets this, is we have not done an annual review of them
all right.
for a very long time. But there was that caveat to an annual review and perhaps rescinding that special use if they were violating.
So maybe that would be the step, you know, through from administration, is to have them come, if you have complaints, to have them come in for an annual review before the planning commission with these complaints in hand, and ask them how they're going to address these things.
yeah, we've done that. I mean, we've done that in the past. We've had Adam come in, we've talked to it, and, you know, come up with different solutions. So we can do that. We can put that on the list.
Okay,
Have
I can-
Adam come in, and we can check in with what he's doing and how he's doing. I mean, I'll say this: you have a gem in this township of this thing. I understand mitigating noise, but this is property that everyone, you know, sort of gets all fearful of density and development. If that thing wasn't there, you'd have a lot of homes sitting there, a lot. So I don't know.
But this is what's there now and what was sold to us.
Right.
Two different things.
Well, there's two different people that own it. I mean, we're in a totally different situation. So yeah, you can do what you want with it. You can just call a spade and change it, which might be the way to do it. But I don't know.
I agree with you. It would be good.
Just change the way it's structured.
I don't know about the noise situation either, is if it's as loud as he's saying it is, I don't know, I've not been there.
Well, you should invite other neighbors.
Well, they also have the monitoring, and when Nick was there, he would come in with the reports. And so,
And Adam sent one
yeah,
last year.
right, and I can get the reports and that data
We
from
need
them.
an updated one from them.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would just notice a review. Maybe we just put a review on the agenda at some point, and then
I will invite him and tell him this is
invite him and
what it says in our, and when it was approved, and this is.
somehow let
he's
the
invited
neighbors
him in,
know.
Right.
Okay. So noted.
My other communication is, I have been receiving a lot of applications on residential solar, panels. And I've been issuing those under our accessory structure, portion of our ordinance. However, I mean, some are roof, but some are actually in the yard. My concern is getting to be, what is residential? You know, what is the limit on residential? Is it 15? Is it 50? You know, and at what point? And I'm only using because of setbacks and height. However, we're going down the road with this, and I talked with Attorney Thal about this, that I think that we need to get a little bit more serious in actually having an ordinance that the board might want to address for residential as well as commercial.
Makes sense.
Cause I've issued permits this year for about 7, you know, for, you know, as accessory structures, cause there's only about maybe 12 panels, you know, in their yard.
And we have nothing now other than it's just an accessory structure.
That's, yeah, I really didn't wanna deny them, you know, it's, that didn't feel right, and maybe if perhaps I should have addressed this sooner.
That's how you figure out what you need, is when people start bringing it to you. So
Yeah.
I don't see any problem with that, but yeah, I don't know if has the board talked about this or not?
No, but we should.
It was actually addressed at the joint meeting we had in November last
Yeah, they come
year.
up there, yep.
And we discussed that, but it didn't really rise to the level of a priority. It was more Lake District, it was, you know, rezoning, it was some of these other things. But I am really getting a lot of requests, and I believe Rob has some ideas about this.
Yeah, I mean, so this is very timely for municipalities right now. Everybody's putting into place solar ordinances to address residential solar, but and then a big issue is utility scale solar. Right now, the power companies, the big power companies, are looking for lots of rural acreage to just put solar arrays on. You know, they buy 1,000 acres if they could and put those solar panels there or more. I mean, I've seen townships that they're buying up or leasing up all the land they can possibly get their hands on for utility solar, because there's certain standards that the state of Michigan has to meet, certain criteria of a certain percentage of alternative energy production. So it's a big thing all over the place, and it's really important to figure out how you're going to, you know, to what extent you're going to allow for it, because you can't, if there's a demonstrated need, you cannot just exclude a use from your township. So you can't, you know, if you just say no utility solar, you know, if they're demonstrating a need, which I think if they wanted to be aggressive, they probably could demonstrate a need statewide for this because of the criteria they have to meet. And so you really need to have something built into your ordinance to control it, determine, you know, where you might allow for it and the criteria for allowing for it. So I've seen some townships get caught off guard by it, and I wouldn't want to see that happen, you know, in Sylvan. So I think it's a pretty big priority to address the utility scale and then also residential. I'm seeing a lot of issues with, you know, solar panels going in the front yards and, you know, complaints and things of that sort. And the number of solar panels that somebody might put on their residential property. You know, limiting it to what they need for, you know, powering their property rather than maybe putting more and selling it back. So there's a lot of issues there, but I think it is a high priority to get something in place very soon.
All right, I would agree. So process-wise, we can start that process. We don't need the board to start it, right?
I think
Do we need the board to start it?
I thought it would go to the board. Board accepts that recommendation because they're allocating funds for it.
Okay.
Okay. We'll bring it up.
All right, thank you. Good. Anything else, Carol?
On my end, no.
All right. up for November 17th?
Patrick's tabled item. Is it?
Just that table item, so that'll be played by ear. All right, I will be out for work November 17th and also December. So this is the end of my year and my time. So I need to take a step back and focus on the little guy who's quite mad I am where I am right now, and because I've been in a meeting all week. So I'm gonna step back and do that, and if my work life should change, I certainly would entertain coming back and helping out. But it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the time, and I'm glad we ended on open space because that's the whole reason I got on here. The important individual for the next statement left, so. But yeah, I'm still hanging on my property, which won't ever be developed as long as I'm a standing man. So that's not why I got on this board. I wanted him to know that, since he likes to tell the public otherwise, and courtrooms and wherever else he can tell. And one of the things I'll leave you all with is something I was taught years ago in policy development by a friend and mentor, and who was a governor at the time, and he said, Dave, if you walk out of the room and everyone loves you, you're not doing shit. If you walk out of the room and everyone hates you, you need to walk back in the room. And if you walk out of the room and half the people love you and half the people hate you, then you're doing the right thing. So hopefully half the people here love me. Half the people. But no, and that's my last point, which is, and I've seen this come up here, the times when we can have the best discourse and the best outcomes, and I think the OSPDO shows that, and Patrick's been more than this way, and I will note that, is that you can disagree on ideas and you can disagree on vision, but what makes it tolerable to have an actual discourse is you never, ever make an assumption about the other person's motives. I think that's key. As soon as you make an assumption about their motives, then you both get your backs up and you both don't see eye to eye. But if you just go at it and realize that you may just have different ideas, but you're both very much so in it to win it, then usually it turns out pretty good. So that's my advice, and thank you all. And with that, I will make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Lee. All in favor say aye.